If you all saw me walking kind of cluelessly around the sanctuary before church started, it's because I had misplaced my microphone. I'm forgetful. I think it may be my spiritual gift. Maybe it has something to do with the chromosome. I am forgetful. The other day, I left my phone in my truck. No big deal. I do this all the time. I usually will leave it on the console or in the cup holder. And new vehicles these days, they have wireless chargers, so you intentionally leave your phone behind. Genius, really. The only problem was, this time when I returned to pick up my phone from my truck, I had left it on the dashboard. I had my hands full, and the phone was in my way from grabbing something else. So I set it up on the dashboard of the truck, walked away, went away for a while, realized I needed it, ran back out to the truck, and I got this message. This message. Did you know that they do this? Yeah, maybe you've been laying out in the sun and didn't realize it, but your phone didn't like it as well as you do. That is a temperature warning for your phone, and it says, iPhone needs to cool down before you can use it. Here's the thing. My iPhone didn't care that I needed it in that moment. My iPhone didn't care that I had 43 texts waiting on me and I needed to make 3 phone calls and a Zoom. This was my iPhone's way of telling me, I'm out. Your crisis isn't my problem, and I'll only be back after I cool down. They're called smartphones. I'm starting to see the genius. Here's the question. How many of us have the good sense to do exactly what that iPhone did to me? How many of us ignore our own warning signs? And we'll just push on through. And we'll have a message in our own minds, talking to ourselves, saying, I'm fine. Everything's okay. Even though just 2 seconds before we were staring blankly off into space, wondering what it was we were supposed to be doing when we were doing what we're doing. I'm fine. When clearly we're not. You see, God has wired us with warnings, shutdown prompts. We call it stress, anxiety, but really it's our body's way of telling us, cool off. Take a minute. Unplug. God's clever like that. You see, like a phone, we can overheat. We can get a little bit too much on our plates. Our hands get a little too full. But unlike my phone, we too often won't stop. We just keep going, grinding on. Yet God, our designer, our creator, the one who designed the way the world works, was a rester. God, in God's wisdom, created all that was, worked really, really hard, and then took a break. God said, I'm out. I'm done. See you in a few. And when we get these urges, when we get these warning signs to take a break, let me suggest to you that is the fingerprint of our Creator on our being, the one who knew to rest, the one who knew to retreat, telling us it's time. We're human. Those urges are gifts from God that we should listen to and not push through. You see, yearning for self-care is not a weakness. Taking care of yourself is not selfish. And I'll be honest, I feel like a hypocrite preaching this message. because preachers are the worst at doing it. And here's the truth. Every single sermon I preach, I hear first. And this is God's way of giving me a message. I'm a hypocrite when it comes to self-care sometimes. I'll have that message going on in my head. That's that fake news message. That's the deceiver's message, not God's message, saying, push on through. You're okay. It's fine. I'm a representative Christian. And what our small group is learning is that in order to bridge the gap that Steve Cuss, the author of our small group study, he says there's a gap in our spirituality when what we believe about God and what we know about God doesn't quite jive with how it plays out in our life. And what he says is that bridging that gap, closing that gap, actually begins with us and caring for ourselves. And in order for us to love our neighbor as ourselves, we first have to love ourselves and take care of ourselves. The Apostle Paul says this is an act of worship. It's a holy sacrifice. Do not be conformed to the way of the world. I think that statement stands on its own. But be transformed. To be transformed means to not look like that. To be countercultural. We talk about that all the time. Instead of neglecting self-care, we should focus on self-care, because it'll close the relational gap between us and God. Here's what he says. He talks about it through the lens of family systems. Now, if you've ever been to counseling, or if you know a counselor, or if you've ever studied psychology, you've probably heard of family systems theory. And what family systems theory says is that if you're not okay, or if somebody in the family system's not okay, then it affects the entire group, the entire family. So, let me put it this way. This will probably break it down for you better. Have you ever heard the phrase, if mama ain't happy, nobody's happy? That's family systems. Let me ask you this, young people. Have you ever had a bad day at school or at practice or whatever you were doing, and you came home and you lashed out? You took it out on mom or dad or brother or sister? Moms and dads, have you ever done this? Have you ever had a bad day at work? Come home and the least little thing just sets you off. And it spreads throughout the family. It causes a gap in the relationship. And really what the problem is you've had a bad day at work. And you can't separate that from yourself in the system. What the author of our small group says is that we need to be aware of that with our gap with God. And in fact, if something's off with us inside, then we're less likely to have a healthy relationship with God. And what he says is true. The first step into bringing the gap closer, this expectation gap, we're not getting what we're expecting, is to present ourselves as a healthier self to God. To become healthy on the inside so our relationship with God can be better. And here's what he says. Because we love God and we love neighbor, he says, as we do this self-work and this self-care and we listen to the warning signs, the gaps will close, not only with us, but with the people that we love. That person at work who annoys you so much will become a little less annoying if you're taking care of yourself. Paul says, I urge you. You know what that means? This is urgent. It's like the iPhone. If I leave it in that heat much longer, I'm making a trip to Nicholasville Road. I'm going to be replacing that thing. Paul says this is urgent. Guess what? You can't replace yourself. There's no iPhone store for you if you burn yourself up. And beyond that, we're not quite as important as we think we are. I've got a friend, I told you about him. He's laying in the hospital in Houston. He runs the UPS in Lexington. He is the boss. East of I-75, if you've gotten a package, it's because he has managed that warehouse so you will get your package. And he's fighting for his life. And you know what UPS is doing? Putting someone else in his seat. And yet we devote our lives to killing ourselves for things that don't matter. And there ain't a soul, that's not linguistically correct, there ain't a soul that's going to take care of you except you. And the world will move on whether we do or not. Now that's tough, but it's true. Paul says this is urgent, brothers and sisters. In view of God's mercy. Man, that's a powerful phrase. God is merciful. God doesn't want this for you. God wants you to be free. He wants to free you from these shackles that we put ourselves in. He wants you to be renewed. Offer your bodies as a living sacrifice. Holy and pleasing. Holy and pleasing unto the Lord. This is true and proper worship. Worship isn't just what we do here for an hour and a half, give or take. It's what we do all day long. God is with us always. Always with us. And what we do with ourselves, our body is the living temple of the Holy Spirit. What we do with ourselves is an act of sacrifice to God. It is as important to God as coming to His table and receiving His sacrament. It is important to God as giving generously to others when you have. It's an act of stewardship. It's a way of life. He says, then, once you get beyond the pattern of this world, powerful. There's a pattern in this world that's not for you. Once you get beyond this, then you will be able to see what God's will is, His good and pleasing and perfect will. Paul reminds us that this all begins with our minds. It's a mindset. It begins for having a mindset to care for yourself because no one else is going to care. It begins with a mindset that you were made differently, that you were wired differently, that God's fingerprints are all over you, the one who rests. And even when God took on flesh and His warning sign went off, what did He do? He retreated. He got away. He recharged. Let me tell you God's genius. Which day of the week is Sunday? Do you know? First day. Michelle knows. Sunday is the first day of the week. What are you supposed to do on Sunday? Take rest. It's the Sabbath day. Look at the genius of that. God has designed our holy day so we will be rested to take on the week. Now what do? We look at it backwards. Sunday's like the bookend of the week. We work our tails off so we can get to Sunday and take a breath. That's not the way it's supposed to work, brothers and sisters. We're supposed to work from a state of rest instead of rest from work. And that makes us healthier and happier. And we're going to live longer. And we're going to have life. You see, there's a difference between living and having life. And what Paul's talking about here is having life. Understanding what God's will is. His good and pleasing and perfect will. It begins with caring for ourselves to bridge that expectation gap. So I'm a mess when it comes to this. So that's my word for the day, mess. So people, if you're a mess, you got company. Pastor Scott's a mess with you. So write down those 4 letters, M-E-S-S. That's how we're going to work through this. That's how we're going to care for ourselves. The M is for mindset. Self-care is a mindset. It is a way of life that begins with thinking about things differently. Self-care means transforming your mind and replacing those awful narratives, those voices in your head that are telling you otherwise. telling you, I'm fine, let's just push on through, it's going to be okay. Well, it may be okay, but there's a reason you're getting the warning. Replacing harmful narratives that the world has given us. The Protestant work ethic is a thing, after all, you know. Replacing those narratives that resting is lazy, or that you're only valuable when you're doing something. I would like to suggest to you that rest is actually doing something. We need to replace those narratives that have been toxic and unhelpful to our culture. And you know what will happen? Culture will follow us, especially in the family system. Because what you're doing and what's at stake is not only your life and your way of life, but the way you live will feed itself down through your family. So if you are a restful person, you can almost bet your children and children's children will learn to rest from you. But if you are a workaholic, well, it's okay for me to be a workaholic. I'm doing that for my kids. Are you? Because you're really teaching them something about your values and what God would have you do. Renew your minds. God created you for work, but He also created you for rest, and there is a balance. Balance and rest. It's not selfish to practice self-care. Let me repeat that to myself one time. It is not selfish to practice self-care. It's a mindset. That's the M. E, the E is for essential. It is essential. You will burn yourself up or burn yourself out if you don't rest well. Ignoring self-care is like ignoring software updates. Your phone does that too, right? Maybe I'm talking to the young people right now. Do you ever get the update on your phone and you'll hit remind me later? Now I'm talking to myself again, right? And it'll come up the next day, and what do you hit? Remind me later. And it'll come up the next day, and what do you hit? Oh yeah, and again, and again. Do you know what happens if you keep doing that? It'll get all messed up, and you'll be on Nicholasville Road getting the man at the iPhone store to straighten out your mess. It's essential, that update. It helps the system to be running right. It helps your phone to do what it's supposed to do day in and day out. Guess what? So is your self-care. So is taking care of not only your physical body, but your intellect. So is taking care of your emotional needs, as well as your physical body and your emotional. So is taking care of your spiritual body. Your spiritual body feeds over into the physical body, and vice versa. I had somebody in my small group, I'm not going to name names, say, when I get my physical self in the right place, man, I'm in tune with God. How many is that true for you? Maybe it's not physical, maybe that's not your thing, and that's not your idea of rest. That's cool. But how many of you, when you get to doing something that is really caring for yourself, you see it feed over into other parts of your life? This is the way it works. Good habits produce other good habits. That's called habit stacking. You remember that book too. We did that not too long ago. Guess what also happens? If you get into bad habits, they stack up on more bad habits. I'm just going to leave that one there. But I will say that self-care is essential. God has designed us with built-in warning systems. Have you ever felt like your hair's on fire? Yes. That's God's way of telling you something. God designed us with warnings for stress, fatigue, and burnout. And He designed us to think about that not as we're weak, but as Him wanting us to take the rest that He would have us take. He designed us to not just push through or push them aside. He had designed us to take a pause so that everything else can work right. Just like that update. The E is for essential. The first S is for simple. Simple. Do you know my iPhone, when the warning came on, I hit every button trying to get that thing to keep on working. You ever done that? I shut it down thinking I could turn it right back on. Nope. That thing had to set for at least 15 minutes, I think. I don't know. I set it in a cool place, and you know what I did? I realized that I was also getting hot. And so what I did is I took a walk around the block. I didn't go to a spiritual retreat to calm myself down. I didn't do a 10-day detox as if that's what I needed to do to fix everything. I took about a 15-minute walk, give or take, around the block. You know what started to happen? I started to unplug. I was breathing the air. My allergies might disagree that was helpful, but it helped me. I saw things blooming, not because they had to, but because that's the way God wired them to in this season. And I realized I don't have to bloom all the time. And I kept walking around the block and noticing the old buildings, and I realized there was more wisdom in those old buildings than I would ever find on Facebook or whatever it is they're calling Twitter now. And what I found out was when I returned to pick up my iPhone, not only was the iPhone cool, so was I. I forgot all about those 43 messages, 3 phone calls, and a Zoom meeting for a minute, and I was alive. 15 minutes. We're not talking about walking on water like Jesus, friends. We're talking about a pause, an unplug, a giving back to yourself. When my iPhone cooled down, it was ready to work perfectly. Only 15 minutes. What would it look like if you took 15 minutes to renew your mind, to offer your body as a living sacrifice, as a reset, even? Doesn't have to be difficult. We sometimes make it more difficult than it has to be. It can be taking a walk. It can be breathing deeply. It can be having a laugh with a friend. I think Reese said it could be called hide and sleep. Hide and sleep. I want to try that one. I think that's a pretty good one. Self-care is as simple as saying no sometimes, because here's the gospel truth. A no to something else is a yes to what's important. A no to the world is a yes to you, to God, and everyone around you. Self-care is surrendering to God and saying, I trust you enough to take a pause. It's an act of worship, an act of faith. Here's the last S. Closing that gap by caring for yourself is a means of God showing you salvation. Do you people that spend your life burning yourself at both ends think heaven's going to look like that? Lord, if it's like that, I don't want to go. It says heaven is like a place where there's a river flowing through. I imagine things are in bloom. I imagine we can take rest by that river and worship. I don't imagine we'll be sending emails, responding to text, or taking Zooms from heaven. I imagine that we will be at perfect rest. The ultimate purpose of self-care is to give you a glimpse of heaven. To care for yourself spiritually, physically, emotionally, intellectually is a way of connecting with God Almighty. It's a way of renewing. Here's why. Healthy souls connect better to God. Healthy people connect better to each other. You don't have to wait until you're falling apart to unplug. You don't have to wait until you're at rock bottom to take pause. You just have to step back, breathe, and let your life take on a new rhythm. One that is healthy and hopeful. A rhythm of worship, not work. Because being fully alive, that's the stuff of salvation. Not just being alive, but living. Not just having faith, but being free. If you haven't given your life to Jesus Christ, won't you do that today? Why don't you take rest in God? Why don't you give up these things that you are battling and lay them at the foot of the cross and surrender your life to Jesus Christ so that you can live in His ways and walk in His will?